So, welcome once again for the last time, I know, single tier, to the Games Development Show, where we talk about everything to do with games development. And today, we're going to take a little bit of a tangent, but it's not quite as much of a tangent as you might think. We are going to talk today about board games. So first of all, as always, let's have a look at some words in the subject by the wonderful Extra Credits.
A few weeks back, James was at a convention, and an aspiring game designer asked him for some advice as to where to start. When James began talking to him about board games, the young man replied, "I don't play those. I'm gonna be a video game designer." This isn't the first time James has heard something like this from people eager to jump right in and start creating video games, but board games serve an important role in our understanding of design, and in our gaming community as a whole. So today, I would like to make a short case for why board games are absolutely relevant today. While this will primarily be aimed at students of design, I hope there's something in here that resonates with all of you. So, why should we care about board games? We should care because they're the purest translation of rules to experience. In a game like Call of Duty, Skyrim, or even StarCraft, many of the rules are obfuscated. As a player, you can't possibly see, much less understand, exactly how all the underlying systems work to create the experience you're playing. Things like bullet physics, enemy AI, or pathfinding behavior have an enormous effect on how these games play, and yet they're almost impossible to fully deconstruct from the outside. This makes them a poor starting point for a designer learning to analyze games. If you really want to understand how a set of rules become an experience for a human being, we need to start somewhere where nothing's happening under the hood. And that means board games. Since in board games all you have to operate every action and motivate every player behavior in the game is a set of very explicit rules which are clearly spelled out for you, they serve to offer us fantastic insights into design. As a designer, as a thought experiment, you should see what you can deduce about player behavior and about game balance from the rules alone. Will wood turn out to be the best resource? Will players fight over the which? By having defenders win in the case of a tie, how will this affect the way that players play? More than that, you should see if you can see the connection between the rules and the play they create. How do a set of instructions make something feel like combat? How does a logical sequence or a set of math feel like managing a city? Also, try to understand why the designers had to put in each of the rules. Try to understand how each piece fits together as an interlocking whole. Try to figure out what it would do if you were to remove or change any of these rules. Do the experiment. Change one of these rules yourself, replay the game, and see how the play is affected. This will teach you a great deal as a designer. Additionally, look for rules that stand out to you, especially things that are oddly specific or that address edge cases. These sorts of rules almost always come out of testing. They tend to be a patch for something that the designers found after the initial design was complete. See if you can figure out why these rules were necessary, why the game would break down, or how players would exploit the game if those rules were missing. This will help you understand how to build robust systems. Next, rulebooks will teach you an unbelievable amount about communication. In a video game, because the computer prevents the player from breaking the rules, video game design can be a lot looser and rely a lot more on players' trial and error. We can be a bit lax in how we communicate. But board games don't have that crutch. A good board game has to have a rulebook that allows a player to pick up and play the game without any outside instruction or help. Additionally, a good board game has a set of rules that are also easy to read and aren't a chore to get through. If you really want an excellent design exercise, try making a simple board game and writing the rulebook. Now, hand that rulebook to someone you've never talked to about the game and don't tell them anything about it. Just observe them as they play. What game are they playing? Does it look anything like the game you thought you had built? At what points do they deviate from your intended design? What questions did they try to ask you, which you, of course being a good designer, refused to answer? You have no idea how much going through this exercise will help you both as a designer and as a communicator. Lastly, board games are one of the best ways to teach us about social play. When video games started being able to do all the laborious mathematics and parsing all the recondite charts that old hardcore board games used to thrive on, board games designers rapidly figured out that games primarily about social dynamics were how they could compete. As all the hardcore strategy, Avalon Hill type games migrated to the computer, board games took over the offline co-op that video games had largely abandoned with the advent of internet play. Watch a game of Settlers of Catan or Diplomacy or Cards Against Humanity, and you'll see the incredible design work that went into fostering social play, to creating interpersonal moments, to force conflict or communication. Examine how this is all done with just a set of rules, of interlocking systems, how these personal dynamics are created by a set of logical instructions. Doing so will make you a better designer. Doing so will teach you lessons that you'll be able to apply to many video games, and, in my opinion, prepare you for the design landscape of tomorrow. I hope that helps convince some of you that even if all you want to do is create video games, board games are worth playing and worth studying. If you're feeling in kind of a board gamey mood right now, PATV has a show for that. It's called Shut Up and Sit Down, and it is entirely about board games. Maybe go watch a few episodes and get some recommendations. We'll see you next week.
Well, thank you as always to our wonderful, wonderful friends at Extra Credits, and now to our panel of experts. For the people at home and the people in the ship, could you introduce yourselves?
Sure, my name is Boyan Radakovich. I am a game designer, but I'm also the producer of a certain show called Tabletop, which is part of this whole movement of bringing board games back. So I think this was probably made before Tabletop.
Curses.
I would guess.
Tabletop, guys. Tabletop.
Seriously, watch it. It's awesome.
It is awesome. And yourself, sir?
My name is Tim Donks. I'm one of the mentors here in the creativity area at TG, and I'm a technical designer at Deep Silver at Buster Studios in the UK.
All right, so we've got an expert on board game design. We've got an expert in games design and more computer games kind of generated arenas. So what do you think of the video so far?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I like the final case that being a good board game designer makes you a better video game designer. I think that's absolutely true.
Yes.
On the one hand, we have to understand our history, where games come from, and that's a big part of it. Is like for thousands of years, people have been playing games, and for hundreds of years, people have been playing board games. So it's natural to understand the landscape and why we do it and what's fun about it. And so that's really important. And then even into the transition into digital age, a lot of the stuff was just straight up mapped over, like levels, damage, critical hits, map design, all that stuff comes straight from board games, so all the basic skills that you're going to learn in board games, and it's just a lot cheaper to test. If you're going to iterate and make new versions, doing it on paper is a lot easier, you know what I mean?
I mean, Tim, you mentioned that earlier. You do paper prototyping.
Yeah, exactly. When I was working for Funcom on Age of Conan, I made a paper prototype version of the game where they basically converted all the real-time rule sets to the game. And then I found one of the encounters that I didn't like and gave the rule set to the rest of the designers. Go play this. I'm not going to tell you how the encounter works. Here are the rules. Go play. And as a result, they changed the encounter. But basically, it's a much cheaper way of just iterating over something, like you said, and just making it work. In that case, it's much better.
It was actually interesting you mentioned there, you gave it to someone to try out, and you mentioned that in the video as well, getting someone to try out what you've done. I think that's actually a very good design rule in general. I mean, we have it for web design as well, in the case of my actual work, if you design a website and design the layout and the navigation.
And then you pass it to someone and you watch them actually click on weird stuff. You're like, what are you doing? The red button's right there.
It's such a weird experience. I've done that with the two-way glass and everything, and you're sitting there going, no! Go left! Go left, for crying out loud. So you need that perspective, I think, from the player.
It's proper focus testing. But basically, when we do something, we tell all the designers, make a prototype. It can be in-game, however you want. Make a prototype, because then you know if it's good or bad, and you can quickly change it before all resources become invested in the program and start actually making it.
Yeah, and actually, even in terms of very basic things that you consider video game terms like user interface, is important for board game design too, because how do people see the information? How do they interact with the other players? What do they look at when they're trying to do their thing, right? All that is exactly the same in board games. So learning those graphic design cues and how to minimize information, it's all very important in board games and in video games too.
I think actually Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 are fairly good examples of that. If you were to be confronted, let's say, with the full rulebook, I mean, I haven't played since maybe 3rd, 4th edition, but still, it's a big, sizable...
It's still intense,
So, there it is. Digest that before you can play. That put a lot of people off, but it came with that sort of cheat sheet for the very basic movement to 6 inches. This is what weapon skill is and what dice roll you have to, to hit. Same with ballistic skill, strength, toughness. So it made it easy to digest, and you could at least get started playing an intro game. So I thought it was a really good example of just how to take that information and get people started without having such a barrier to entry.
Yeah, absolutely. But we were talking about it before camera came on, where there are some game mechanics that are actually better played in computer, and some are actually better played live. This is an important thing when you're designing a game. You have to know what platform you're on. So if you're designing for a board game, things like social interaction are very important. Bluffing, deception, all that kind of stuff is important live and would be terrible on computer. But other things that are directly heavy combat games, real-time games with lots of stats and lots of critical effects and all that kind of stuff, is best in digital, right? So like Warhammer 40K, I would rather play an electronic version of that than the board game.
I mean, you even seen that in the transition. That's the word that had to come out of my mouth, the old transition from 2nd edition to 3rd edition. 2nd edition was kind of a skirmish game, so lots of very intricate rules about hit modifiers. Are you behind soft cover? Well, that's grass, so you get like a +1 to your save. Or are you behind the big wall that's covering more than half of the model? Yeah. And, you know, of course...
That's better in computer, right?
Exactly.
You fire, if it hits, it hits.
It's so much easier on computer.
And you saw the transition, they had all these intricate rules, but Warhammer 2nd edition was like a skirmish game. But people didn't want to skirmish, they wanted vast armies that blotted out the sun like in 300. So in 3rd edition they had to scale all of that down. And again, that is better. I'd rather not have to work out what my modifier is. I'd rather it just said like critical hit or +6 due to something. It just told me what it was doing.
Yeah, there's that. We're actually I have other panels that I do. I said this is the golden age of tabletop gaming, but as far as the bridge between like old school miniature wargaming and like what you see here, like tactical military combat, there is a bridge now. There's a game called Golem Arcana, and it is a miniatures tactics game. Like you have the minis and you do all the stuff, but all the math is done with an iPad.
Oh.
Yeah, so you basically just point and you're like, oh, I'm going to move this guy there, and I'm going to fire. And it's like, well, you're on a hill and this guy is behind a tree, and it just does the math for you.
So you get the best of both worlds.
It's best of both worlds, yeah. So you get to have the fig. You're like, oh, this thing is sick. You know, I love it. And you have the toy up there.
Paint it. And,
you can do all that stuff, and you don't have to worry about, oh, you know, did I find a thing in the shrub? Let me hit it. You know, like that kind of crap. So yeah, that's really important. And I also think, like, the iPad itself is creating a whole new version of games that are out there. Yeah,
but I agree with you, and it is nice to get the best of both worlds. But I still think the traditional games have a place, and I would highly recommend for any designers who want to get into this. Read these books. I have all the Warhammer 40K books, and I read them for fun. At GDC, they actually have workshops on this, where they basically say something like, take a real-time game such as Super Mario Kart and turn it into a paper prototype. Make it a board game. How would you do that? Like, is it important that we change the steering mechanics so it works on you could potentially do it with cards. Okay, it's a card for a track, and then you get cards for special skills that you can play. It's good to think about as a designer, how does it work?
You know, it's interesting you mentioned Mario Kart there, because co-op Mario Kart, especially when you're in the same place, local co-op, the social interaction is really, really important.
That's the important part.
I mean, you've seen the adverts for Mario Kart where it's a happy family playing, and you know that's a lie. No one plays Mario Kart without swearing at least once.
Yeah, it's true. And in that game, that is a game that's best played live. So you know, it would be a good board game if you can like move together and like when you hit the little random present box, it is just a deck of cards that you randomly shuffle and draw a thing, right? So there are a lot of the same the same feelings are in board games, right? And so that one probably would translate well, whereas I don't know, like a stealth game probably doesn't.
Possibly, but that's part of the design exercise. Okay, can you make it into a board game, and how would it work? And just doing that will make you a much better designer, which is why the traditional games are still relevant.
Yeah, I actually have a little bit more metaphysical point.
Okay, we're getting deep here.
I'm going to get deep. Okay. So game design's about like kind of mixing fun and tension over time, and like kind of balancing things so that players don't have to do it, right? But when you play a game like a board game, it's very apparent that the fun that you're having is within you, and it's within this shared dynamic that we're all playing together. Like if you play a game like Pandemic, and there's like, here's your little like red pawn, and here's like some like little cubes on a board, right? It doesn't look like anything, but your heart's racing. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe it, and you're like, please, no pandemic. And then you turn it over, and like the whole world dies, and you're like, oh, everyone's crushed. There's nothing real there, right? You look at it, it's just like paper and chip and like that kind of stuff. But the experience, the tension is real.
You create that.
It's because it's in us. And so here's a metaphysical point, right? I'm going to blow your mind.
Okay.
The game itself is a mirror, right? We're trying to create something to reflect the fun within you. So it's very easy nowadays. So when you're playing a video game, to be like, oh man, these graphics are sick. The storyline's amazing. It's like, it's only awesome because you identify with what's in the story there, right? And all that stuff's taken away when you're playing a board game. It's very apparent that the fun is us. hanging out and having good time.
Because there's nothing better than getting a group of actually really good friends. And we talked about the social experience. Cards Against Humanity is a great one.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That one's best played live. Why would I play that on an iPad?
Why would you ever play that on an iPad?
Yeah.
I mean, I still can't help but just feel very fondly within me about the time I managed to get Harry Potter in the Chamber of Harry Potter Erotica. It was that perfect moment, like, yes!
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that moment of you're sitting, watching everyone go, well, I'm going to say this, and you're just like,
trump card.
Boom. Yeah. What you got?
Yeah, but that one is like, you remember the experience, everyone's hanging out, you're drinking, having a good time, right? Like, all that's part of the experience that we remember, right? So,
on the flip side of it, you've actually got the Mario Kart side as well, board games they're almost designed to cause arguments. It's one I've heard about. I've not had a chance to play it yet because it's out of print called Mall of Horror.
Yeah.
And you're in a mall, there's zombies everywhere.
Yeah, zombies everywhere, yeah.
You'll be trapped in a shop, but eventually someone has to get let go and sacrifice the zombies.
Yeah.
And the game mechanic is just trying to justify yourself. Don't throw me at the zombies, I'm useful. But by the same point, everyone has like a value at the end. And the more useless the character, the higher the number of points you get for having them survive. So if you've got like the useless 5-year-old kid who whines and makes noise to attract zombies and can't do anything, instinctively, if you want to survive, you're like, see ya.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to be here. But you have to balance that against the thing. But the consequence for the players is you'll have people screaming at each other, begging not to be thrown to the zombies, and you create that because you're not actually going to be thrown to zombies.
Yeah, no, it's like that is called co-op with Defector, right? Defector mechanics are a very social thing. Like, we're all hanging out, we're all working together, except secretly one of us is trying to kill the others, right? And so there's a lot of lying, deception, and like trying to figure out what's going on. Like, those games I wouldn't want to play online, And some work great. Some mechanics will translate easily. Some are better computer. Some are better live. So you just, like, when you're building your design, you got to pick which one you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, even with stuff like, say, Skype or kind of Google Hangouts, you can sort of make it work in a technical sense, but there's all kinds of social cues, body language, facial expressions that you just you can't pick up on unless someone's actually there.
Yeah, the magic's not as live. If we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, we're just hanging out here on the couch and we're playing, telling a story, great. If I have to dial up, or if I have like a weird lag, or I can't actually see your full body expression, it's not as fun. And that's why playing online like that, it is sort of a lesser experience.
It is a challenge, but it's for us game designers to overcome this obstacle. I actually want to get these defector mechanics in the game, but it's difficult.
So what would you do, like, if you were trying to do something like that, like make it a more live and immediate response, like in video games?
I was actually playing around with some mechanics where you had a dungeon and two different groups had to fight for the boss, but while doing this, some of them will get contradicting objectives.
Oh, nice.
Do I want short-term gain, or do I want to go what the team wants?
And that's better online because you can have hidden information very easily.
Yes, you can have hidden information which you can't do in these games. So each has the strengths and weaknesses, and we can make it work. But
I look forward to this. I want to play this one. Partially because I just want to stab my friends, but also it does sound interesting. Moving on from that, we've mentioned board games design essential for if you want to be a video game designer. Is there anything else you think maybe would be really useful to do in a similar vein when you want to go into game design for digital gaming?
Actually, guys, there's an action episode for this. As a game designer, you pretty much need to know anything, experience life, stuff you learned. I once did a small talk in front of a school, and basically anything in the classroom was relevant. Oh, you're learning about mythology, you're learning math. I use these things all day, every day. All this stuff I never expected to use from school, I'm using on a day-to-day basis now.
In fact, I'll go to classes and I'll talk about this as well, but I try to look at game design as like a perspective. Like, you're a designer, go out there and figure out how things are designed. Go to a concert, why is bass behind treble? Like, why is it? Like, why is this room shaped like this? Why are the flowers growing like that? And like, once you stop and see the patterns, like, it makes your design so much stronger, right? And so you basically learn to simplify in like all these like key concepts in game design. You can just see it everywhere. It's like, this is the natural way of doing things, right?
I guess some quick things that might help people. Just read up on psychology and sociology. There's a lot of lessons that we learn there. Once you know what plays find appealing, you can use it so much.
Excellent. One other question that just came to mind, again it's a tangent. Did you guys ever play a board game called Atmosphere, except it was spelled like F-E-A-R and it had a videotape with it?
No, but there used to be games like that. And there actually still are some today where it's like this hybrid, like the thing is playing and it says like, roll the blue die, and then you're like, oh, yeah.
What's your opinion? Because I remember playing it when I was younger, like maybe about 8 or 9, and at the time it was genuinely scary. The scary face comes up and goes, stop, do the thing, the rest of it. But playing it later, you're like, this is hilarious. And it doesn't work quite so well. So have you tried these at all?
Yeah, I have. I think they're funny, right? Especially going back. There are some games that are modern that still do that. There's, especially with hidden information. If you have like devices that can look at information and like figure it out, and you have your own private, like that's okay. I think it's better played on a computer. Yeah. But there's a good game called Escape, and you're basically, it's a co-op dice rolling game. It only plays in 10 minutes, but there's actually a soundtrack. And so you'll get the track out and you'll play it, and it will count down. And it's like your heart's beating, the drums are going. It's like dun 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 dun, and you're like, oh, I broke my ankle over here. I need a torch. Oh my god! It's like zombies everywhere. It's like it's good. And so in that case, it does enhance the experience. Sometimes it will detract from the experience. Yeah. Especially if it's like hokey, like what we're talking about. Yeah.
But then again, this ties in with your comment earlier. We could combine video games and tablets in this case to give the board game experience. And in that case, you could do the whole hidden information. So it would be nice if we could actually make a proper new version of the game, you said. Where it doesn't feel as awkward, because we can actually make the screen respond to what's happening now.
Or you could maybe have like 4 iPads and people get conflicting objectives, again, from the guy who was called the Gatekeeper in this game. So maybe he comes up to one person, or he comes up to someone else and gives them or a message just comes up, so you can't really tell that they're being messaged. So, there's opportunities for that.
I mean, if we're all hanging out together, I would rather play a live board game. If we're playing asynchronously, like I take my turn and then you get notification, that's fine. Like there's a game I play, Ascension. I play it all the time, and it's a deck building game. It's like a 30-minute game on your own, but on my phone it's maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's better played on a computer, right? It just depends.
All right. Just to go back to an earlier point, we talked about focus testing for games and testing out designs. You've both done some kind of paper prototyping, you design board games as well. Have you ever had any just complete disasters? You've thought, this is going to be amazing, this is going to be amazing. Why are you crying? What's going on?
Pretty much every time,
But do you learn from these as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The last game we designed is for the Numenera board game. It's not out yet, but it should be out later this year. But Paul Peterson and I, we were designing the game, and the first time we played it, like the first mechanical test of it, we got like half of it right. I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And then catastrophe on this stuff. And that's more important. Like this is actually far more important than the 50% you got right. And so that's how you iterate forward, is you take it, you're like, what happened? Oh, wow, that's obviously wrong. Let's tweak that. Test it again, and then you'll get to like 60, 70, and like you keep going until you finally buff this thing down until it's nice.
Because presumably it could take like a one game-breaking 1% to just...
And especially when you're looking for what's fun in a game, that's the most important thing. Like watching people play it, like they said in the video, watching what they're doing and like where they're struggling, you're like, oh, that major point, it's probably better to just cut that whole thing out,
It's like the rules should be an aid to play the game as opposed to something you have to do in order to play the game. They should be there essentially to help the game move and help you move along with the game as well. Which again is a good kind of design thing in terms of UI we talked about earlier, just making it easy for people to play the game that you've made.
It's probably easier to get people to play a paper prototype just like real quick than it is to play like, oh, let me sit down and like install this whole thing.
It's much faster. But we use it as well in the video games industry. Basically, we take people off the street, sit them down, actually hook up heart rate monitors and cameras in the face so we can read the expression. And then record both in sync so we know exactly where that's probably, you can see the they clearly don't understand this part, and then we can go and iterate and change it.
Do you have like a heart rate monitor on them?
I'm
and all the
guessing
biomedics.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's not quite as creepy as you made it saying, yeah, we just grabbed him off the street and
No,
hooked him
it
up to
wasn't
all
that,
this,
but-
Nah, they get cookies and orange juice. It's okay.
I do like cookies and oranges. So, now you mentioned earlier, actually, we're kind of in a golden age of board gaming.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for folk our age as well, I grew up where it wasn't uncommon to have fairly simple board games when you're a child, like Snakes and Ladders, Monopoly, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then digital gaming got bigger, through the 90s, through the 2000s, to the point now where it's omnipresent. Whereas people, say, even 10 years younger than me, may have grown up just straight into digital. So it's almost like different perspectives there.
Yeah, and that's part of the big challenge is breaking that stereotype of what board games are. Like in the first, see this image, well, it's a little bit too fast, but there's an image on the screen that they first showed in the video where it's a bunch of old school games from the 70s. They're all, I would never play them now. They're just, the design's really poor, the fun efficiency, like how much fun over time is really kind of sucky. There's player elimination. There's all kinds of things that we've just cut out of design. We just don't do them anymore. The modern games, if you take any board game now, even like an average one, it's way better than what was going on 10 years ago. And that's infinitely better than what was going on 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, like our show, Tabletop, we try to introduce people to new game mechanics, new styles of play, why it's fun, and that's the biggest thing, is just breaking that misconception of what tabletop games are.
Although it's really weird how Monopoly's actually stayed. It's like the one game that's just continued and continued and continued.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like most gamers who are like, oh, Monopoly, rage quit. I think it's nice, like if I'm doing a gaming event and someone comes in and says, oh, I like Monopoly. I'm like, great, let's play Ticket to Ride.
Yeah.
I say, oh, you want to play Scrabble? Great, let's play Bananagrams. Like, it's a yes, but let's do the new version of it, right?
There's more out there, and it iterates and it builds, and we get a better gaming future.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm really excited for this generation of designers who get all these board games and all these amazing video games. Like, what's coming out in the next generation is going to be so much better. They're so better educated, and just like so much more experience. Yeah.
And also, if nothing else, just so much more tactile as well. Like the packaging's got so much nicer over recent years. You've got all this cool stuff. It just feels nice to have all the different models. I mean, take Space Hulk, for example. You've got the old version with the very rigid Terminators. You've got the new version. All the Terminators are incredibly detailed. All the Gene Stealers look amazing. And it's still one of the most tense games That game's cost me relationships in the past. Sure, honey, you can go to the Gene Stealers.
But sadly, a lot of people haven't played.
It is a shame. I mean, obviously it was a limited print, so it's sold out like that.
Yeah.
But it's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, so when I'm introducing people to games, I'll take that kind of experience and try to figure out what they like.
Yeah.
And then try to match it to other games. So what was it? Was it the tension? Was it the sci-fi theme? Was it the combat system? Like, what do they like? And then find something like it, and get them to the next step. Introduce them, and then that will broaden their mind. And if they're a designer, even better, because they might be working on a problem and they see it here, like, oh shit, that's so much better.
Yeah.
Like, I should just do that in my game.
That makes sense. You expose them to other things, and it's a very good design exercise, which is why more designers should play playing board games.
Yeah.
It's also safe to say for a lot of people, if you find that one board game you really like, you're hooked, probably.
Yeah, and actually coming back from video games is easier. Like, I ask people, what do you like? Oh, I like StarCraft. Oh, you like resource management? Yeah, I really like building my economy and like being aggressive. I'm like, all right, let's sit down and play a resource management game like Agricola, because you're probably going to be really good at this. And it's absolutely true. The skills that they learned in game, they just straight over port onto the board, and they're like, oh yeah, I know how to do this.
Yeah. So I think one more question.
Yeah.
And it's because, it's the last game development show we have.
Oh,
I know, it's like single tier, in a distance. So it may as well make it a fun one. So you're on a desert island.
Yeah.
You've presumably got someone there who can play board games with you. However many people you need, none of whom are any good at building things to escape from Desert Island, so you're stuck there.
Oh, so not the board game Escape from a Desert Island, the instruction manual?
Exactly, no, you can't bring that, I'm afraid. So
boo.
And you've got one board game to do you from now until you die years later in your bamboo mansion that you've constructed because you're stuck on Desert Island. So, Boyan first, what would you take?
Yeah, I get asked questions like this, and it's kind of cheating for me to say there is no one game, because here's the thing. Like when people say, "What's your favorite food?" or what's your favorite restaurant? You want to come visit me in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
The first thing I ask is, what style of food do you like? Right? That's what I would have to ask. Like, who am I with, and what do they like, and then find the best match for that. And so, I have the best in lots of different forms, just like you would have like your favorite Thai restaurant or your favorite Italian restaurant, or like what's your favorite R&B song or whatever. You can't just say this is the best, period.
Yeah.
And I know it's a cop-out, I know, whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry, internet, you can hate me later.
Yeah, if you want to call Boyan a cop-out, hashtag TG15.
Cop-out.
Cop-out. So on to you, Tim. One board game, if you can.
I'd probably pick one of the pen and paper RPGs. Not truly a board game, but it does give you the freedom to have multiple adventures stuck to this one thing.
And you can play for a long time, like a really long story arc.
I'm sure I'm allowed to bring one book, right?
Yeah, of course.
Some dice.
Yeah, I will allow that. You sit down at your custom-made table made out of palm trees, so you know.
Yeah.
Or a stump, actually. Big tree stump, that's your table.
With a coconut.
With a coconut.
And a straw.
And a straw.
So that's actually the advantage of board games, right? Is the power is sunlight, right?
Yeah.
The visual, like you don't have to upgrade your video card because it's your eyeballs, right? Your logic processor is you guys. So you can play these games 10 years from now and they're just as good. You don't have to worry about updating any software.
That part's taking care of you, basically.
Yeah.
You know, miniatures will look better, packaging will get better as time goes on and humanity advances.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not directly linking the advance of board games to the advance of humanity in general. I'm just saying, you know, there might be a correlation. But yeah, you're right, it's within your mind's eye, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's your limit.
Yeah. I know there's people on the internet's like, oh, you didn't answer the question. I'll give you one. The spirit of the question is, if you had to play one game or recommend one game to people, I would recommend Ticket to Ride.
Okay.
It's pretty much the gateway I use to get people into tabletop gaming. It's really easy to get into, a lot of fun. In fact, I learned all of my Nordic geography from Ticket to Ride. Like, oh, Hummer. Oh, that's a by Lillehammer. That's a one-track tunnel. Like, I need to have a, that's the way I learn things. But yeah, it's a really great game, and it has an awesome iOS adaptation. You can play it online as well. So
it's in Steam as well, so it's very accessible. Don't you try the board game? You can just try the digital version first and then move to.
Yeah, actually, that's part of their model. Is they give the digital version either free or very low cost to teach the mechanics. People learn how to play, and it's a bit of like a marketing tool. And then the board game itself is like a premium upgrade, right? So it's I can buy the game for 99 cents or free to learn it, and then if I want to play and have like the cool pieces, then I pay more.
But of course, it's so much better when you can see your opponent when you screw them over.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't work online.
Yeah.
And for myself, I want to say Space Hulk because I enjoy it so much. I love how tactile it is. I love the artwork and the pieces. I love the models.
Yeah.
But, thinking practically, it probably would have to be Cards Against Humanity. Because essentially you have like infinite possibilities and infinite combinations.
Sure.
And I have an awful sense. I'm a monster, really, when it comes to that. So I'll never not be amused by some of the stuff that's in there. And maybe put in a caveat that maybe people could like occasionally airdrop the expansions at me.
Sure.
Like, they don't have to pick me up. They don't have to rescue me.
Yeah.
We'd have to find a proper sociopath who would happily just throw cards at a stranded survivor instead of rescuing them. And again, you can play it with just 2 people, you can play it with 5 people if more people turn up on this desert island, which I've made my own, is now my kingdom. With my army of jaguars and stuff like that. But I think Cards Against Humanity, because I've always had the most fun socially. Just kind of going back and forth. Just an absolute riot playing that. Get a few drinks in you as well. That pizza.
That's exactly how you're supposed to play that game. Yeah.
Exactly.
It only gets better after some reason.
Maybe after the gathering's done, we can, sit down.
I have it in the tabletop area. Like right after this, I'm going over playing some more.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do this. This is happening.
Yeah.
Unless we get hungry, but maybe after that.
Well, I had some pizza. We'll just bring it over.
Oh, shall we high five?
Boom. There it is.
But with that in mind, with the concept of offending as many people as possible in mind, I'm afraid we're going to have to call an end to our game development for this year's gathering. Guys, it's been a pleasure to have you on, as well as our other experts that we've had on over the course of the week. If you ever get interested in game design, please spend today visiting Creativia. Talk to the mentors there. Everyone's really friendly. They'll set you on the right path. And as always, thank you so much to the guys from Extra Credits. The videos have been fantastic.
Absolutely.
Giving us all a lot to talk about, a lot to think about. Hopefully this could be the starting point for next wonderful generation of Norwegian game designers. Who knows?
I would love it.
I would love it too.
Yeah.
So it's all on you guys now, you know, out there. You're responsible for this now.
Go make games.
Go make games, guys. But again, thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Hope to see you next year, guys.
Okay.